In this video, I am honored to sit down with the man, the myth, the legend. He's sitting in front of me, the amazing Damon Lindelof. I mean, I've tried to put this chat together for a while, and I'm so grateful Damon would take the time to come on. You may know him. Do I even need to give him an introduction? Writer behind TV shows such as Watchmen, The Leftovers, Lost. He's also gotten to do some film work on stuff like Star Trek, Prometheus, and on top of that, he's an occasional comic book writer with one of my favorite graphic novels, Ultimate Comics, Wolverine versus Hulk. Damon, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today, sir. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. It's a true pleasure. I'm very tickled by your enthusiasm.
Yeah, well,
Uh,
it's just
this
gonna
is
go down. It's waning because we've hit
yeah,
all the high points, and now people have clicked on it, so there's no real point to continue. So,
I'm much more comfortable with the disappointment trajectory versus an anticipation trajectory. So
well, then you've come to the right place, Damon.
let's
Yeah. So, I mean, at least I'm known for something. But no, let's just jump right into it. I sent this initial message, and normally I like to think I'm rather professional, but for anyone, watching who's not in the loop, in Damon's, TV show Watchmen, at some point the character Ozymandias basically does a huge ripper, like a big, gigantic fart in front of everyone. And I mean, obviously it's a bit more thought-provoking than that. And I mean, Watchmen, greatest piece of literature, so much goes into it. And you're probably thinking, it sounds weird, but anyway, I watched that moment in the show. And like I say, if you're not watching, you're going to be so confused. And I recreated it in front of my friends once. It was early in the morning. And, I ripped ass. And then I led with that amazing one liner that was in the show. And then I said, you know what? Why don't I tell Damon that that happened? Because then he'll immediately want to be interviewed by me. And it worked.
It worked.
So
That's the easiest and fastest way to my heart is the acknowledgement of the way to my heart is a fart, I guess is what we're trying to say. But again, I you did identify one of the most delightful moments in the creation of our Watchmen television series. I remember the moment in the room where that idea manifested, for lack of a better word. And I think that in writers' rooms, moments of sheer delight are very rare. Most often, when they happen, it doesn't translate to the screen. You know, what's delighting you in the room is not something that has anything to do with the show. But in this instance, we were all laughing so hard, and then someone was like, "Wait, are we actually contemplating doing this? Can we get away with it?" You know, and then all all along, I just felt that feeling that every creative wants to feel, especially when you reach my advanced age, which is, are they going to let us get away with this? Someone's going to stop us. It's HBO is not going to go for it, and certainly Oscar winner Jeremy Irons is not going to let us get away with this. And lo and behold,
his best work, if I might
it,
add.
it happened. Yeah, his email to me was, "Do you need me to do this live on set? Because I probably got about three good ones in me, and and make them count." We're like, we can take care of it. Make the face. We'll take care of the sound effects.
So you're telling me acting isn't all glory and filmmaking isn't all seriousness and you can just fire every once in a while. I think this is the job I was literally born to do. No, I mean, Damon, talk to me just about comic books. I know you're a huge comic book fan. I mean, what's the origins? Did little baby Damon come out of the room, come out of the womb talking about Dr. Manhattan? What's your comic book origin story?
My dad, my origin story is actually my dad's origin story.
Yes.
So he was born in the mid 1940s,
Yeah.
and he went to I don't know, in the UK. Do you have like Boy Scouts or Cub Scouts? They
Yeah,
like go in.
yeah. I've never been a part of it, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
around.
So it's quite popular in the US, but it's a sort of like a community organization where you like go out into the woods and learn how to start fires and chop down trees, and you engage in civic duties. My father went to Cub Scout camp when he was 10 years old, and for 2 weeks, and he came back, and his mother had thrown away all of his comic books. And
The nightmare.
not because she was a horrible person, but because she was like, it would be like us seeing newspaper around the house. Like she's like, "Oh, you read it. Now it's garbage." And my father had meticulously, even as a 10-year-old, he had cataloged every one of those issues that he had. And so by the time I was born, 20 years later, in the mid 1970s, he was going to comic book conventions
Yeah.
all around where we lived to reassemble the original collection. And so I would go with him to these conventions, and fell in love with comic books. And I remember the day that he got it was a Walt Disney Uncle Scrooge comic book that was the last, that
Yeah.
sort of the holy grail. But of course, he had been continuing to collect all through his adolescence and young adulthood. And so I started by, you know, reading kind of kiddie comic books, Richie Rich and Archie and that sort of a thing. And then I started migrating to more mature comic books when I was like around 10 or 11.
Yeah.
And kind of the rest is history.
So your father dropped to his knees when he found his Howard the Duck ripped up, and he said, "I vow I will." So he turned you into his comic book weapon, which I mean, I feel like that's the best way to get in, really, isn't it? I
It
mean,
is.
just
It's
and
like
so
the legacy.
were there any specific comics, or was it just those kind of Richie Rich start out comics that really helped inspire you as a creator?
The comic books that he collected, were very sci-fi and fantasy comic books.
Yeah,
And he was really into, again, a lot of the comic books that he read in the 50s as a kid, particularly they were the EC comics that started kind of with Mad. Mad started as a comic book. It later became a magazine, but Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror, Two-Fisted Tales. They were these very mature, intense, beautifully drawn comics that ultimately created that they were so adult that they created a backlash and instituted the comics code, because it was sort of like, these things are like rotting our children's brains, and they're horrific and they're violent. And so I started reading the same stuff that he was reading when he was 10, because that's what he had reassembled, even though, and I was holding these comics in my hand, they were 25 years old. And I kind of did feel that sense that, Indiana Jones probably feels when he's dealing with, archaeological finds. But it also felt incredibly relevant and cool to
yeah,
me. So, and then I started getting into the DC heroes, primarily Batman and Green Lantern were kind of my main squeeze
yeah,
guys. And then the Marvel books, around when I was 11 or 12,
yeah.
particularly Spider-Man and the X-Men were kind of my main hang. And that was when Chris
Oh,
Claremont's run, that's when I started reading X-Men. And so, that was all happening around when I was 11, 12, 13, and Watchmen, Watchmen happened when I was 12. And that was obviously I've talked about this ad nauseum because of the show, but like
yeah,
that was the moment where people who I'm relatively agnostic religiously,
yeah.
but reading Watchmen was like a religious experience in terms of, oh my God, I feel like I've seen like another dimension of reality. This is possible. It like unlocked all of these things inside of my soul and inside of my brain. And it, to I mean, the reality is it diminished some of the other comic books that I was reading at the
Oh,
time,
it have to. Yeah,
because you were just basically like, well, if you can do this, it's just not exciting anymore to watch someone do a double flip off of a diving board. You
yeah.
have to do like a triple flip and then stop right before you hit the water and teleport away.
You're just like,
Like,
where's the octopus in these other comics? Where's the, what does the, so I imagine little 12-year-old Damon was like, damn, the missile crisis. I mean, this is heavy stuff, I mean, which is, for a 12-year-old, Watchmen is certainly an interesting choice. But I know you've kind of talked a lot in your interviews about kind of Watchmen being the source for a lot of your inspiration, even as a writer. And you kind of credit that to kind of helping, make you a writer in a lot of ways. I have my copy here. And something funny about this specific Watchmen paperback is that on the back we have, quotes from some of the biggest news articles. We have Rolling Stone, New York Times Book Review, The Village Voice, USA Today, Entertainment Weekly. And at the bottom, there's a quote from you, Sir Damon Lindelof. So your name over here in Ireland, your name has reached a very own Watchmen trade paperback. How does that feel?
It's very exciting. And I first heard about that blurb long before I, decided to do anything with Watchmen. And
Yeah,
so I was giving an interview, I think, about Lost. And that's where that quote is pulled from, where I think it's some version of like, it's the greatest piece of popular fiction,
yeah,
ever produced. But I've been so mercilessly ripping off Watchmen all of my career. And so the idea that, and some form of acknowledgement and attribution of that is now on the Watchmen graphic novel, for which, as a fellow comic book fan, you and I have to mutually acknowledge Alan Moore is not fairly compensated for. And, and every time we buy one of those graphic novels, like that there is a great disparity and paradox in our love for the work, but the disconnect between how the creator
yeah,
was treated in this instance. And that's been a complicated road to travel, and it makes I think Alan Moore is perfectly comfortable with me feeling very gross about it. But nonetheless, the more people who read this thing,
yeah.
the better off the world is, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, totally. I think it's very hard to read Watchmen and just not be better, even as a writer. Like it's hard to just read this comic and not see what makes it just hits you in all the places it needs to. It's literally, I think I'm glad it's the greatest graphic novel ever because it means we know there's a bar. We know we know there's at least there's a top somewhere. We know we're comfortable inside our boundaries, which is so interesting. But no, let me just talk to you. When you were coming on Watchmen, did you reread it differently now going in as a storyteller as opposed to it when you did it as a fan? Was there kind of, discrepancy there at all?
I I think that the short answer is yes. I mean, again, I'm going to use the I pronoun because you're asking me, but the actual process of adapting Watchmen
Yeah.
fell to a room full of writers, all of
Oh yeah.
whom all of whom ranged from, there were a couple of them who I would say were even more fervently, you know, conservatively attached to the Old Testament, which is how we refer to the original 12 issues. And then there were a couple of writers who had not read it at all before
Yeah.
being hired. And so the idea of finding some kind of it was very important to put that team together for exactly the reason that you asked this question, which is I think left to my own devices, if it was just me,
Yeah.
um, I don't think that I I could have overcome my like adoration slash reverence. It was a sacred text, and
Yeah.
so the idea of saying like, who am I to think that I have any right whatsoever to tell stories inside of this
Yeah.
in this realm? And the thing that kind of like freed me up was what Watchmen is, which is it's Alan and Dave. But Alan obviously is the writer, and Dave Gibbons
Yeah.
as the illustrator. Um, but they're riffing on the comics that preceded them. This is their kind of like takedown of the golden age, and their criticism of something that they love and adored. And the reason that Watchmen works is that the two things are simultaneous, which is it's a harsh criticism of what kind of a damaged individual puts on a costume and fights crime, and also we love this,
Yeah.
like what a noble person Rorschach is, what
Yeah.
a fucked up person Rorschach is. How can you hold both things to be true? And so when you start to approach the text in the same way, which is Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons and Dave Higgins, they wouldn't John Higgins wouldn't stop and be fearful. They would just go for it, and they would kick it in the shins. And so whether that's true or not, it's certainly true for Dave, who we met and pitched and embraced our vision for what
Yeah.
he had created. But then it was kind of when you think too hard about it, you're just too
Yeah.
terrified to be creative. So
That,
you
yeah.
you you just kind of had to be a bit punk rock in your approach, even though there's nothing punk rock about me whatsoever.
You strike me as a very punk rock guy. That was kind of the first impression you gave off. I think you're hiding it very well, but I feel
Yeah,
that there's just such an edge to you. There's an element there,
yes.
And
I like sex and I like pistols, but I'm not familiar with the Sex Pistols.
oh, well then listen, I mean, as
Yeah,
long as if you have one of the two, you're okay. No,
right.
but listen, that's something so interesting to me. I mean, the fact that superheroes, in real life is something now that's, I mean, immensely popular. I mean, what if superheroes were real? I don't think it's ever been more fervent than it has now, but I don't think it's ever been done as well. Like especially with a character like Rorschach, who I mean, this dude is genuinely crazy, but at the same time, he's so confident in his beliefs. And it's like, well, what do you consider to be a good person to be? If you consider a good person someone who stands up for what they believe in, well, then, I mean, listen, Rorschach falls into that. But if you consider a good person someone who follows by the rules, and, Rorschach delivers that amazing monologue in the book. I'm just geeking out now. Rorschach delivers this amazing monologue, about how, so, like, it's not God that kills the children. It's not, destiny that feeds them to the dogs. It's us. And so when you're dealing with something that's such an exploration of superheroes. And I know the idea of masks fascinated you coming onto the series, right?
Yes. I
Yeah, and
mean, I think that the fundamental idea was, and again, not my idea, just an idea that's been out there and introduced to me through
yeah,
comics and a variety of, this is it's usually contextualized as sort of like a Batman idea, which is like, is Bruce dressing up as Batman or is Batman dressing up as Bruce?
yeah,
It's the Kill Bill Clark Kent construct, except for the fact that he doesn't wear a mask, he just wears glasses. But I think that the idea that the mask that you choose, it hides your face, but it actually reveals your identity. So why does Rorschach choose the mask that he chooses of the ink blots,
yeah,
and unpacking the fact that this character doesn't have a simple origin story where he was like struck by lightning in a lab, but he was a child of a sex worker,
yeah,
was ritually physically abused and watched his mom be physically abused. He was institution he was educated and institutionalized. He came into possession of this dress around the time of the murder of Kitty Genovese. He saw the complacency of humanity and not preventing crime from happening,
yeah.
and he is mentally ill. And probably through the lens of some psychiatric evaluation, very confused sexually. Um, all of the above. These are not the things that
That's not what a
that would
superhero is, you're saying?
I'm not
Superman doesn't. I thought you were describing
traditionally.
Superman for a minute, and then
Yeah,
I was like, the dress part. I thought I'm not following, but then now that you mention this Rorschach, now it's coming back to me. I understand now.
yeah.
Yeah, but there you go. He's such. I mean, Watchmen is filled with these interesting characters, and I mean, what I really love, and like, I mean, I've been name dropping you like crazy. I've been telling people me and you are best friends for the last 2 months, so that's just that.
I,
But I
that
was
is so weird because I've been doing exactly the same thing.
well,
We're
that's why you
like,
haven't gotten very far. That's why we haven't had any new Damon jobs in 2 months.
there you
I mean,
go.
that's your mistake. But listen, I mean, tell you something. If you know any comic book people, well then don't name drop me either because I'm not popular anywhere. But listen, I
Just a
brought
matter
up
of time, my friend.
a matter of time. This is the one that's going to get me rich. Because like I said, I don't do it for the passion of comics. I do it for commercial gain and success, which is why I think everyone should do it. So at least I'm honest about it. No, but something. I mean, that really like when I brought up your name, obviously the Declan Shalvey, who's a artist here in Ireland, and I was like, oh, I'm interviewing Damon Lindelof soon. Me and Damon Lindelof like that, and he's like, oh yeah, I love Watchmen, and what I really liked about it was that it was just something new. It would have been too easy to have gone on to Watchmen and been like, okay, well, we'll bring back Dr. Manhattan, we'll do something with the main crew. We'll just kind of continue on. Instead, you went up there, you took your big swing, you said, what you and the other writers said, what can we do? What's new? And is it hard for you? Is there ever an element of nervousness when you're taking those swings, when you're trying to do something big and bombastic, because that's what I love. And I really admire that. It would have been so easy to have just done something simpler, but instead you were like, I want baby octopuses falling from the sky and stuff like that. And so is that hard for you as a writer and, for your team to go up and take those big swings?
It, it sounds like the answer to an interview question, but it's just the authentic truth, which is it's the most terrifying thing in the world.
Yeah,
I think that the thing that makes it exhilarating is the terror. I think that, there's nothing to be gained by climbing up, to the top of a cliff and looking down and then not feeling frightened that you
yeah,
might die. Because then if you jump, that's not it. If you're not scared, it's not going to be exhilarating. The fear is what makes it exhilarating. And
yeah,
so I think that you can't you can't write from a place of fear. You have to write from a place of confidence. And so the entire creative process on Watchmen was acknowledging the fear and then finding ideas that were so powerful that they helped us like pretend that it wasn't there or overcome it. But that was temporary. That is to say, it wasn't like after like 3 or 4 months of working on the show we stopped being afraid. I
yeah.
was scared all the way up through the show airing, just in terms of the whether or not what what we had attempted to do would be understood. I think that to be, overly simplistic about the meaning of life, um, the
Do you have
meaning
the
of
answer? You,
I maybe I'm going to try. I think that the meaning of life is to know yourself, is to know why you behave the way that you behave, and do the things that you do. That's it. If you and I'm not there yet, but if you're an artist or you fancy yourself an artist,
yeah,
you have a like a like a really cool um mechanism by which to make this know thyself thing work, which is you can read what you write or watch the
yeah,
shows that you make and be like, why did I do that? And so it starts talking to you. And
yeah,
so, and the other mechanism is when you make a TV show or a movie, the audience starts talking about it. And
yeah,
if they're critiquing it, it feels like they're critiquing you. Like, of course it does. If you're doing it right, it's so personal. And if they're loving it, it feels like they're loving you. And so nothing feels better than that love and nothing feels worse than that critique. And
yeah,
you're going to get both. There's no way you can do this job well and not get both.
yeah,
You just got you're just got the pendulum swinging and you want to spend as much time in the middle as you possibly can,
yeah,
between they hate me and they love me, because it's just unrealistic. The laws of gravity will not let the pendulum stay at they love me. And
yeah,
so that creative process of trying to acknowledge the terror and the fearfulness of what if we can't transmit what it is we want to transmit,
yeah.
but you do it anyway.
Oh, I mean, totally. And like I think you're the greatest writer alive for that Ozymandias farting scene. You thought I was going to start complimenting you. No, give me
No,
a
no,
minute. I
good.
like that the
No,
farting scene. It was
it's
just
much
so
more
beautiful.
comfortable.
It was just so beautiful. It said so much. And then all the talking kind of threw me off. I was like, what's this about? I mean, where's the shooting?
The,
Where's
the
the
entire the entire show should have just been communicated with flatulence. I
Well,
think that
oh
would
my,
be
you're speaking to me now, Damon. Now we're getting somewhere with this interview. That's my article. Maybe someone will post. It should have been done with flatulence, baby. I
yes.
mean, this is my ticket, I suppose. I mean, I always knew it would happen this way. But no, let me just. This is just a random nerd question. Have you ever, when you were doing Watchmen, did you ever consider including any of? I mean, obviously there's people like Laurie in the show and Adrian Veidt, but did you ever consider doing flashbacks and like to the actual comic and filming some scenes from the comic, or was it always doing something new and kind of remixing it?
One of the rules was that we didn't that again, because Alan had said I don't want this was a comic book and it shouldn't be treated like a piece of filmed entertainment, and also because Zach had already made the movie.
Yeah,
Just sort of felt like, oh, let's treat everything that happened in the comic book canonically. It all happened. and some of that was really difficult to game for. Like there's a panel where you see Hooded Justice's eyes. He quite clearly appears to be a Caucasian man.
Yeah.
And we were presenting a black Hooded Justice, and so we had to address that in the storytelling. But to do flashbacks from the actual graphic novel itself, like you
Yeah.
say, we had to put a spin on it. So we did the squid, which I think is as close to an image from the original Watchmen as
Yeah.
we were willing to get. But we did try to contextualize it through the prism of Looking Glass's experience at a carnival across
Yeah.
the in Hoboken. But like see how moments in Watchmen touched our characters without needing to kind of like play the hits. Or there's like a moment where the Minutemen are being photographed that is suggestive of the photograph that we see in Watchmen, but it is not that
Yeah.
photograph. It's an entirely different press conference. So we wanted to evoke the feeling of the graphic novel without needing to necessarily play the hits.
Yeah. I mean,
Like we keep
definitely.
saying graphic novel, it's the comic. It's 12 issues that were later consolidated into what people call the greatest graphic novel of all time, but
Yeah.
wasn't
So no
designed.
pressure. You like to pick the easy jobs, don't you? It comes like I was interviewing the director, Mike Flanagan. He goes, you Hollywood people really like picking the easy jobs. He was like, I don't believe in picking the easy job. And I was like, oh. So I mean, that seems to be all of yous. But no, this could be my only chance to interview you. So let's get weird with it. You got to do Wolverine versus Hulk. As a graphic novel. I mean, and it's such an amazing graphic. But tell me about that. How did this come? Because this, I mean, was that your first comic book work? Because I know you've done some stuff with Jet, like Lemire. Was it on Batman?
Yeah, we did like we did a one off in strange tales or strange adventures, a time travel story, and then we did a Batman story, and I did a Superman story. Like a again, it was like an 8 page or a 10 page.
Nice.
Um, uh, is a Jarrell story. And then, but the only full, comic book limited series that I did, it took me like 5 years, but I did finish it eventually.
That's all you need. That's all you
Yes,
need. As long as you have the first one and the last one. But
right.
no, it's so amazing. And if anyone hasn't read it, I would totally recommend you do. One day I'm going to get my copy signed by you. I'll fly out to LA and I'll crash at your house. It's fine. I don't really mind. I'll
You
take the
know,
bed. You can take the couch. It all works.
Daniel, there is this thing called, and I'd love you to have you on my couch, but there's this thing called the mail, and I can mail you a signed copy of Ultimate Wolverine versus Hulk because I have them in my possession. It doesn't, unless you have some treasured one, and I can find an excuse to come to the UK. But
Dude,
I think we can make that happen.
there you go. That's off now. If I do get it, it's going straight up on my wall. But that you paint a beautiful picture there. Now that's amazing. But something I love about Wolverine and Hulk, and let me just say it right here. There's I obviously maybe you don't remember because it was a while back, but you brought up a really interesting point. There was a massive cattle massacre in Ireland. What's that about? I mean, I'm over here in Ireland, and you brought the Hulk to Ireland, and he killed some farmers because they were slagging him for eating tofu. I mean, what's the deal?
I have nothing but love for the Irish people,
That's okay.
and I felt like it would just be very funny for Hulk
It
to
was pretty funny. It was pretty
be in
funny.
that situation. If there's anything, considering the rich history that Ireland has, I'm hard pressed to think of a better sense of humor despite overwhelming hardship than the Irish. So it felt like a very natural place to park a man who's not ever allowed to get angry.
We can laugh at ourselves and we are very, very self-deprecating. So we have that going in our favor. And listen, Damon, if you ever make it out to Ireland, I might let you crash on my couch. I'll have my people talk to your people. I do tend to be pretty busy. We might be able to pull something off. A sleeping bag is in the talks, but I am proper busy, so we'll have to see what works. But there you go. That's an open invitation.
I will get my people on that immediately,
I
and
know.
you should know I'm an excellent house guest.
Yeah, I mean, you're already painting a brilliant picture, and that's where I can pitch you my Ozymandias farting script. It's all coming together in my head. I
Oh my God.
figure I'll stretch it out 800 pages. That's how long the scripts normally tend to be, right?
Seems a little short, but I'll read anything.
It is my magnum opus.
Yeah.
No, but would you ever, come back or do something else in the comic book world?
Um, I, of course, I will just say that of course, it was really hard. And I knew that
Yeah,
it would be because I think that this sort of idea of, writers in different mediums, I think that the idea of saying like someone's a musician, they may be an excellent guitar player, they may be an excellent songwriter, they may be an excellent cellist, but that doesn't mean that they can play all instruments. And so
yeah,
for a writer, I think that I've gotten pretty good at television writing. I'm trying to get better at movie writing, and I could never write a novel ever. My brain just doesn't work that way because I
yeah,
need to be collaborative. And comic book writing, for someone who's read as many comic books as I have, the
yeah,
idea of you have to be very visual, even though I'm not an artist, in
yeah,
communicating. In the case of Ultimate Wolverine and Hulk, Lanil Yu did the art, and he's incredible. And he lived in the Philippines,
yeah,
and so he would just get the scripts, and I'd never written a comic script before, but it's like I'm trying to describe what's happening in the panels. And obviously there's way too much dialogue and not enough visual storytelling because that's the way that my brain thought from features. And then you start to look at the pages and the proofs and you realize, oh, there's too many words in this panel that are covering up Lanil's amazing artwork. So now I have to start to think moving forwards, how can I get the
yeah,
characters to say less and still
yeah.
transmit the story? And it was immensely challenging. I have a lot of I always respected comics writers. Brian Vaughn was
Oh
on
man.
Lost for a couple of years, and I
Okay.
worshipped him as a comic book writer before he came and worked for Lost, and I worship him as a comic book writer even more today. I mean, I think Saga may very well be the best ongoing comic book that exists in terms of what it's accomplishing. But the fact that he could also be a great TV writer
Yeah.
made me immensely jealous.
Dude, get out of here. I mean, that graphic novel, it's genuinely one of my favorite graphic novels. Now, get out of here. It's like, it's on my shelf. I love it so much. It's just, it's like, well, it's something like that. It's just such a fun concept. And seeing your name attached to it, I was like, yes, it's genuinely amazing. And like, look, man, I mean, I completely understand. But at the same time, Hulk did have like 18 women all over him. And I was like, that's storytelling. This is what your work needs. But no, dude, I mean, I completely understand where you're coming from. That's so interesting. But I believe you are truly amazing at like just writing comic book writing. And if you ever do get that opportunity, it'd definitely be great to see you do some more work on there. But yeah, let me just ask you this. Who are some of your favorite comic book characters, just in general?
Well, I mean, I've already mentioned Green Lantern and
Yeah,
and Batman, Spidey. I like the Thing from the Fantastic Four. Um, I think my favorite X-Man was Nightcrawler. I just thought he looked so cool, and just the whole idea of like he had this demon like quality, and
yeah.
the German accent, and that was, I kind of I like the weird guys.
What about
uh
Condiment King?
Condiment
Do you
King,
not know Condiment King? I'll tell you Condiment King is. All right, let me introduce this guy to you. So,
please.
Paul Dini, I know you worked with him. He did Batman the animated
Sure.
series. Everyone, you're watching this. This is Condiment King goes to Hollywood, baby. If you watch my interviews with comic book creators, I'm subtly bringing him up. I'm starting a Condiment King takeover. Now I'm getting him into Hollywood. My master plan is starting. I am the Adrian Veidt of Dublin. I've put it together in my head. Basically, Condiment King is this really rich character. He was a villain in Batman the animated series, and I get choked up talking about it. He's just such a great character. Give me a second. He shoots ketchup and mustard out of his gun and he shoots it towards people. And it says so much about capitalism and society. And there's a commentary on death if you really look into it. But so, I mean, have I just convinced you to do a Condiment King film with me?
I need to know what his origin story is. Like, can you give me any sense of why ketchup and mustard?
His
You give me,
name.
you give me, yeah, I know it's his name, but it's sort of like Green Lantern. The ship crashes, the alien, it's charged by a Green Lantern. Batman, his parents are killed. What happened to Condiment King? Where's the trauma? You
All right, all
can't
right, all
get me
right.
on board unless there was some truck full of ketchup that smashed into a truck full of mustard that basically killed his entire family. Or I need
All right.
the trauma, Daniel.
His name was Mitchell Mayo growing up. If you were named
What?
Mitchell Mayo, would you not end up shooting people with mayo?
Oh, there's mayo involved? You said
His,
ketchup and mustard.
well, obviously, if he's Condiment King, he's gonna branch out, Damon. This is
What? Hold on.
all right. We'll
What
take
other condiments does he shoot at you other than the three aforementioned ones?
Chipotle. You could say that's a condiment.
Could you?
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's creative storytelling. We'll have the artistic license. His name is Mitchell Mayo.
Yeah.
Mayonnaise.
What about vinegar? Because you guys in the
No,
UK
that's
are all
stupid.
about putting vinegar on your chips.
Damon, come on, use your head. All right, stop being stupid. No vinegar.
All
Oh,
right,
that's a
fair enough.
crazy concept.
I want to know
Honest,
where the line is so that we can cross it
we
together.
found the line. Okay.
All right.
Okay,
The
we
line is at
found the line.
vinegar.
Yeah,
Okay.
bean juice maybe. Because that's Watchmenish. We could tie that in. I guess we could say bean juice is a condiment if you really want.
Human bean juice.
Now that'd make the film R-rated, and unless we get like, well, that is very popular. So I like where your head's at. I like where you're thinking.
Is there a condiment queen?
There you go. That's how we branch it out into 8 films, 4 each. I'm thinking.
Wow. You just jumped right past 2 films and went straight for 8.
I'll pull out my whiteboard here. I have the blueprint. So I mean, no, obviously, I'm not naive. I have a plan on how to do it, you know.
Oh, you're the opposite of naive.
Yeah. So basically, I play young Condiment King, you play old Condiment King, so we can save on casting. You know, I'll get my friend to hold the torch. That's lighting saved. The way I see
was he Condiment Prince when he was young, sort of like how Superboy before he was Superman?
Yeah,
or was he always Condiment King?
It's the condiment hierarchy. So much goes into it. So
yes,
you know, I wouldn't really expect someone like you to understand, but you know, just because me as just
because I don't
philosopher that I am. So I mean, we can easily say that's the first time he's been brought up, and definitely not the last. I'll have my people talk to your people. You can come over to my, my couch. We'll crash. We'll go up to the mountains. We'll write this bad boy. You know, there's just so much I want to say about our world. Nothing important. Like I don't want to talk about, anything really important, like the stuff that we're going through. I just really want to talk about condiments,
I know that this Condiment King thing is a bit of a bit, but it's not outside the realm of possibility that someone that in a world where Polka Dot Man or Kite Man become sort of like prevalent characters in our, if there's a Peacemaker show, man, and it's good. So why not Condiment King?
Could you imagine? Then would DC legally have to pay me €1 billion? Is that how it works?
I think they would.
I know I'm so good at contracts. I have this stuff in the bag. Because I said it first, I knocked on wood and I crossed my fingers. That does mean I own it because possession
legally binding.
Possession is 9/10 of the law. And if they want to sue me, they can't because I'm on international waters. I think that's how it works. I don't know. I have this all sorted out. I'm actually pretty good for this. I
wasn't aware that you were on a boat. So
I went to the beach the other day in Ireland, and like America must have been that way, and like you couldn't swim it, which means it's international waters.
Near international waters. Fair enough.
Close enough. There you go. So basically, I've outsmarted one of the smartest men alive. So I've done it. It's as easy as that.
You have not, sir.
I'm 8 steps ahead of you, Damon, this whole time. You think I'm going to touch you? This is from my Condiment King pitch, baby. We're getting this off the ground. But
Adrian Veidt would say it's already been written, So
what would you do if I published the script 35 minutes ago? What if I airdropped it to everyone in the world? People in Times Square opening their phone. That's my squid, and they just see the 800-page document.
I think that the impact would be similar to the dropping of the squid in terms of that it would result in the deaths of millions, quite possibly.
So I'll be at your house next week. You can pay for my flight over. I don't know how expensive it gets, but I don't mind crashing with you. I take the bed. You don't mind the couch. That's okay, right?
Seems reasonable.
I mean, I am kind of the mastermind behind it. I just go up to one of those studio execs, I believe they're called, and just say, "Can I have a few million, please?" And then I smile, and then they give it to me.
The please is very important.
They call it Irish charm for a reason, Damon. They call it Irish charm.
I always wondered what the reason was, and now I know.
Now you know. So this interview just keeps getting better and better. But no, our time almost comes near. But some of the last things I'd love to just chat with you about. I mean, you know, as a writer, when you're doing constantly these fantastic, like The Leftovers, it's such an amazing show. And I mean, I probably don't tell you, as a young Irish lad, I'm a Catholic, which I mean, we all kind of tend to be. But when you're dealing with something as strong, and I mean, in Watchmen, you're dealing with something like racism, and you know, in The Leftovers, it's obviously religion. Like you have that fantastic monologue about, you know, like I have seen, you know, God, and I've been terrified, and it's just this immensely powerful moment when you're dealing with something as serious as, you know, like race and all these other things. Is there, do you have to kind of say to yourself, okay, well, am I doing this the right way? Am I conducting this in a way that I should be put out there?
Yeah, but I think that this sort of connects to your earlier question, which is that this is the entire purpose behind any form, whether it's comics, TV, movies, novels, songs. You're trying to convey the struggle that you're asking about, which is this the right way? You know, am I doing this? Am I doing this correctly? The
Yeah,
great thing, the wonderful thing about religion, and there are wonderful things about it. There are also horrifying things about it.
yeah,
But the wonderful thing about religion, if you really believe in your heart and your soul in the faith in which you follow, is that it's a construct that tells you you're doing this correctly.
yeah,
Like you can literally go to an authority figure and say, how do I do this better? What's the best way to live my life? What are
yeah,
the rules by which I live my life? And if you buy into it, some of those rules are about living a life of selflessness and caring more about others than yourself, loving thy neighbor as thyself, not hurting other people. Some of those rules can be weaponized in the name of the very same religion, depending on how you take it. And so I think that we're meant to be struggling with these things.
yeah,
And I think, yeah, it's very simple to just say, I'm a devout believer and everything that my religion tells me is correct. And then on the other side, I believe that there is no God, and God is a construct of man to find some purpose and meaning in a chaotic world that is basically just sort of a galactic and evolutionary mistake
yeah,
that we have to the collective sort of artistic consciousness of all of us is to sort of like litigate those poles and
yeah,
everything in between. And I think that um, we we all feel this desire to believe in something. Even the most radical atheists at some
yeah,
point in their life understand what drives the hunger for religion,
sure.
or religious belief, magical thinking, whatever it is. And I just feel like not enough popular culture is talking about it because of what you just said, which is you can piss people off, you cannot
Yeah,
get it right, you can offend people. And
yeah,
there are instances where cartoonists who depict the Prophet Muhammad are literally murdered for doing this because it is such an inviolable tenet of the Quran, where 99.9% of all other Muslims and Islamic faith believers don't believe that someone should be murdered for drawing a
yeah.
picture. But that's kind of where we are.
Yeah, I mean, totally. Religion is such a fascinating thing. And I mean, and like what you said there, it can be used for great things. It can be used to lift people up, but then people, I mean, use it for, you know, bad things, and they use it for the wrong reasons. But yeah, you just put it perfectly there. One of my last things I'd love to touch on before I let you go, I call this the let's clear up everything statement. Some of my questions: what's the deal with the polar bear? What was in the vault? Watchmen, the ending. Did she walk on water? Why was there an egg? Did Ozymandias do a little more than a fart? And did I mention the end of the leftovers? And yeah, just to circle back again, this is kind of the most important one. Did Ozymandias do just a little bit more than a fart?
It was just pure gas, no solid. I think
Okay.
I can confirm that here. I
They're
mean,
just not going to clear up any of the other ones. So I hope some news article clips this that, you know, Damon Lindelof finally clears up big lost conspiracy and it's like it was just gas, not solid.
that's it. And that's actually, I think, the answer to all of your questions. It was just gas, no solid, you know?
That's what if it was never really condiments, but it was just gas he was shooting out of the gun? And then we can make a full circle. Ah, this is too much thinking. I don't like it. Like, can we go back to making it simple? This is too smart for me. It's gone over my head.
It, I I'm baffled. I'm amazed. I'm hungry.
Yeah.
I'm
I'm
I don't
hungry too, man.
yeah, it's all this talk of ketchup, mustard, and mayonnaise.
Whenever I eat something, I tend to stop talking about Condiment King. Maybe there's some psychological reason behind that, but then again, I don't really care.
I think it's just because your mouth is full and it would be rude to talk while you were chewing.
I know that because every waking moment I'm telling people about Condiment King because I haven't. Condiment King is my meaning of life. You brought up this really great answer. I forget it probably wasn't important, but Condiment King kind of trumps that because I was just thinking about Condiment King. I was envisioning you in goggles shooting people with like ketchup, and I was like, damn, this dude could be my Condiment King. So you've never done acting, but how hard can it be? You just
If I were to do it, this would be the role I was born to play.
And can I be baby Condiment King? I'll be little, like I'll be Condiment King Junior. That's
Oh,
like my sidekick.
you're condiment prince. It's a whole royal family. You could be condiment duke. You could be condiment
Ah,
count.
yeah,
You could be the duke of condiments. It's better if it's duke at the end. I don't know. Well, I'll get working on it.
get your people to work it out. I don't know. Just
I'll have it ready by the time I show up to crash on your couch.
all right, get it on my desk by then, and I'm okay. Then I
Not a
have
problem.
no real problem with it. But no, let me just like this. When you're ending a series, is there so much thought that goes into ending as opposed to starting and in the middle of it? You put so much more thought because I mean your endings are so perfect, and I feel like no, no, truly. And I feel like it'd be unfair for me to say, like, oh, how does this end? Because I mean, people, I feel like they'd misunderstand, like the ending of The Leftovers. I mean, it's just so beautiful. So when you're ending a show, does so much more thought go into that as opposed to the middle, or is it all kind of the same?
It's not the same. There's a disproportionate amount of emotional energy and
Yeah,
storytelling energy that goes into the ending, and that's fair. I think that the idea of if you imagine any kind of sports contest where let's say there's a football team that wins every single game of their season, and then in the championship in the last 5 minutes, the opposing team scores a goal and they lose. That matters
yeah,
disproportionately because they didn't win the championship. And so we do live in a culture where really the last 5 minutes of a movie or a television show or a novel, they can completely and totally reframe the experience that preceded it in profound ways, both oh my God, that ending leveled up everything that
yes,
preceded it, or it ruined everything that preceded it. So you have to put a lot of time and attention into it. And the one thing that stories give us that life does not is endings,
yeah,
because to return to our famous flatulent friend,
I love it.
and the conversation that he has with Dr. Manhattan, uh, um, and Dr. Manhattan with him, nothing ends.
Yeah,
Uh, and so even a life ends, but everybody who survives that person continues their legacy as they go on. And so stories actually give us the artifice, the belief that something has ended when in fact it doesn't. It completely and totally continues. The story of Romeo and Juliet, technically, spoiler alert, ends with both of their deaths, but they're still Capulets, they're still Montagues,
yeah,
they're still Fair Verona, like, and you could write a sequel to Romeo and Juliet about what the impact of their forbidden romance had on their two respective houses if you so
yes,
chose. So I think that the idea of saying let's give the people something that they never get in life, which is an ending, so that they don't have to
yeah.
think about this thing anymore. You have to handle it with a lot of intention and delicacy.
Was there more Watchmen after he farted, or was I right to just click off from there?
That's it.
Yes, I knew it. I mean, the rest of it, like once that happened, I was like, oh,
I mean, we made more, but it doesn't really matter.
it doesn't hit the same. You can't have your peak in the middle of it. No, Damon, my last and final question before I let you go, our time comes near. What advice would you have for anyone looking to become a writer?
This this sounds so um obvious and undramatic and borderline cliche, but the answer is read. And I think that it's more important it's a more important answer now in 2022 than it was, when I first answered the question that way. And it's how I consistently answer it, which is so much of my young life was spent reading books and comic books and also watching television and movies, but a lot of reading. I think now the proliferation um, of social media,
Yeah,
our phones, the idea of like sitting down and actually reading and allowing your imagination to manifest worlds and characters and situations is much more difficult because it's just so much more noisy and
yeah.
distracting than ever before. But if you want to write, you know, writing is the energy and the fuel is reading. You have to ingest words into your brain in order to spit those words out of your fingers. I really believe it.
Oh, Damon, I mean, you just put it perfectly. I'd like to thank you truly for taking the time, Xiaomi. It's been an honor. I mean, when I was preparing for this, it was like the same problem I had with Grant Morrison. I was worried like they'd be too smart for me. So I was trying to think, how do I
And you're
possibly
like, this
come up with
guy's an idiot.
I was
Like,
like,
this is
he
a lot
likes
easier than I
condiments.
thought it would be.
He
Yeah,
likes condiments as well, baby. This is
love
easy. I
him.
mean, it's going to be me, you, and David Goyer because he is interested as well. I pitched it to him during my interview. So it's the three of us, but that's okay. We're all on the same level, I feel. You
I,
know,
I couldn't agree more.
yeah, I mean,
It's a very low level,
good, good
but
enough.
an achievable one.
Yeah, listen, I mean, do you have 300 views on one of your recent videos? Afraid not.
I'll tell you, I have 0 views on all of my videos. So, I mean,
So I am the best. That's all we have to say. No, Damon,
wow. Had I known that you had 300 views on one of your videos, I would have said yes much sooner. I'm sorry it took me this long.
it's
We're
all right.
gonna set we're gonna set records with this one though.
It was actually 30, but don't tell anyone else. Everyone,
We're gonna
thank
we're gonna get it up to 350.
Tree, Damon. That's a bit
Excuse
bold.
me.
That's a bit bold, but we'll try. Truly, sir, thank you so much for taking the time. Everyone, Damon, before we finish up, anything you can promote or talk about, anything people should go check out?
No, I've got nothing to plug currently. A couple of things are baking in the oven right now. Got a show that I co-created with an incredible partner, Tara Hernandez. She's show running. It's called Mrs. Davis. Stars Betty Gilpin from Glow in this weird movie I did called The Hunt.
Yeah,
She plays a nun who is battling an artificial intelligence. It's going to be a little sillier than some of the stuff that I've worked on before, but very proud of it. And it's going to come out at some point in 2023. And that's all I'm allowed to talk about.
if it has your name on it, it's gold. I mean, Damon, I just like take this minute to say thank you so much, sir, for taking the time. I mean, there's levels to this, and the fact you'd be so willing and just so kind, genuinely does mean the world. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me, sir. Thank you.
A real pleasure. Same here, Dan. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. You can go follow me over on Twitter at SamboGizmo1. Damon, you on social media now?
I'm my Instagram at Damon Lindelof.
Instagram at them. Yeah, you can follow me guys over on Instagram as well, Daniel Fee33. But yeah, everyone, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, if you have the means, please make sure to donate to the National Deaf Children's Society. Link for that in the description. My good friend Declan Shalvey's newest comic, Old Dog, comes out. The poster's a bit hidden. September 28th, you can all go pick it up from your local comic book store from Image Comics about a spy who comes back into the world. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. And Damon, this is the end of our chat. But in the end, nothing ever ends. Thank you all so much for watching. Bye.